Unfortunately, our director, Ralph Redell, fell sick and is unable to join us today. I would also like to welcome our participants online. Welcome. Today's panel session will present UNIDO's Industrial Development Report, or IDR for short, 2024, our biennial flagship publication. During the discussion, we will explore how a new era of SDG-oriented industrial policies can speed up the green transition, enhance food security, and reduce poverty. The title of the IDR 2024 is Turning Challenges into Sustainable Solutions, the New Era of Industrial Policy. As the title suggests, the report emphasizes the importance of modern industrial policies in addressing global challenges and promoting sustainable solutions. In the course of our session, we will hear how modern industrial policy can play a crucial role in transforming the economic structure of economies towards sectors and technologies that promise sustained growth through competitiveness, innovation, and social welfare. In recent years, we have witnessed a resurgence of industrial policy. However, most of these policies are highly concentrated in industrialized, rich economies. This poses an obvious risk. If developing countries are unable to match the industrial policy efforts of advanced countries, then global divides will continue to grow. Industrial policies are needed in developing countries, yes, but they should not just replicate policies from the past. So some of the questions we will seek to address today are: how can we enhance robust capabilities for effective industrial policy design? How do we strengthen governmental institutions, ensure adequate financing, and broad societal consensus? Without these, even the best designed policies may fail during implementation. With those few remarks, allow me to introduce the structure of our event today. The session will start with opening statements from the co-organizers. After this, we will hear a presentation on the key findings of the IDR 2024, which will set the stage for our discussion. To start the session, I would like to give the floor to Ms. Cecilia Ugas, Deputy to the Director General and Managing Director of UNIDO's Directorate of Strategic Planning, Programming and Policy, for her welcoming remarks. Ms. Ugas was formerly the Director of the Gender Equality and Empowerment of Women Unit and Director of Policy Research and Statistics Department. Prior to joining UNIDO, she served as UN Resident Coordinator and UNDP Resident Representative in Paraguay, and as Deputy Director of the UNDP Human Development Report Office. Please, Ms. Ugas, you have the floor.
Thank you, Adriana. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this side event, a new era of industrial policies for accelerating the achievement of the SDGs. I would like to extend my sincere appreciation to the permanent missions of Austria and Ethiopia as co-chairs of the Group of Friends of Inclusive and Sustainable Industrial Development for co-organizing this event together with UNIDO. In the context of this year HLPF, today's discussion will focus on industry's tremendous potential to accelerate the SDGs, with particular emphasis on SDG 1, 2, and 13. Through technical cooperation, UNIDO supports its 172 members in promoting and catalyzing and accelerating sustainable economic and industrial development. UNIDO's Director General has set 3 key priorities for action: supporting sustainable supply chains so that developing countries' producers get a fair deal and scarce resources are preserved, limiting climate breakdown by using renewable energy and energy efficiency to reduce industrial greenhouse gas emissions, and ending hunger by cutting post-harvest losses and developing agribusiness value chains. All three priorities involve activities that contribute to job creation. UNIDO not only provides technical cooperation support, but always play a crucial role in conducting action-oriented research on sustainable industrialization. The biennial publication we are presenting today, the Industrial Development Report 2024, is the organization's main research output and its flagship publication. The 2024 edition of the IDR is titled Turning Challenges into Sustainable Solutions, the New Era of Industrial Policy. It discussed how today's global challenges can be addressed and overcome with practical industrial policy solutions. The IDR 2024 was produced in collaboration with other UN agencies and research centers around the world. 4 regional workshops and 2 expert group meetings were organized to collect inputs from experts, policymakers, and UNIDO member states. This edition of the IDR is particularly relevant to the theme of the 2024 HLPF, reinforcing the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and eradicating poverty in times of multiple crises, the effective delivery of sustainable, resilient, and innovative solutions. The report asserts that industry holds an immense potential to tackle climate change, create decent jobs, alleviate poverty, and eradicate hunger worldwide. In other words, industrialization is key to accelerate progress towards the SDGs, particularly SDGs 1, 2, and 13. For example, the IDR finds that manufacturing jobs creates on average more than 2 additional jobs in other sectors of the economy. Job creation is indispensable for reducing poverty and achieving the SDG 1. At the same time, manufacturing industries are the hub for the development of new technologies and innovation, offering substantial potential to address today's global challenges and providing an effective solution. Industrial innovations contribute to increasing agricultural productivity, thereby increasing the food security and supporting the achievements of SDG 2. The report also highlights that industry is the primary driver of green innovations, with industrial firms holding nearly 60% of green patents globally. Green technologies, in turn, are fundamental in reducing greenhouse gas emissions and advancing SDG 13. However, realizing industry's potentials require deliberate action. Modern industrial policies are essential for countries to industrialize and accelerate progress towards achieving the SDGs. According to the IDR 2024, successful modern industrial policies must be SDG-oriented, future-ready, collaborative, and regionally coordinated. Today's discussions will explore how industrial policy can advance SDG acceleration, with particular emphasis on reducing poverty, ending hunger, and mitigating climate change. This event offers a unique opportunity for high-level policymakers, practitioners, and researchers to delve into these important topics and offer new insights that can inform future initiatives by UNIDO and its partners. I look forward to a very, very fruitful discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lucas, for your excellent introduction. We will now move to the opening remarks of His Excellency Mr. Tasfei Yumo Saba, Ambassador and Permanent Representative in Ethiopia. Prior to his appointment, Ambassador Saba served as State Minister for Foreign Affairs. Before that, he served, among other things, as Ethiopia's Permanent Representative to the African Union and the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you, moderator, for giving me the floor. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to speak on this platform about industrial policy and its role in accelerating the sustainable development goals. As a co-organizer of today's event, this topic is at the heart of Ethiopia's plan for economic transformation and sustainable growth. Over the past decades, Ethiopia's economy has seen impressive growth, making the country one of the fastest growing economies. To keep this momentum, we have launched a 10-year development plan known as the Pathway to Prosperity. The plan is synchronized with the SDGs and aims to meaningfully reduce poverty by 2030. We are focused on building resilient and diverse economy, the key part of which is developing a strong manufacturing base. Accordingly, our industrial policy is designed to drive structural transformation, boost productivity, and create jobs. Central to this is the establishment of various types of industrial parks, providing infrastructure, regulatory support, and incentives to attract and sustain investment, including foreign direct investment. In particular, a transformative part of our policy is developing agro-food parks to advance agro-processing. As you may know, agriculture is the backbone of our economy, engaging 80% of our population and having a lion's share of our GDP. Yet its full potential is untapped due to infrastructure, technology, and market access challenge. Fragmented agricultural value chains impact our agricultural efficiency growth. In an effort to address these constraints, we have adopted an industrial cluster approach through the development of integrated agro-industrial parks. With the technical and advisory support of UNIDO and other partners, we started the piloting of our 4 integrated agro-industrial parks in Ethiopia. These integrated agro-industrial parks have become models for collaboration, bringing together stakeholders, including partners, to support agribusiness development through a clustering approach. Currently, several initiatives are underway to enhance the operationalization of integrated agro-industrial parks and develop agricultural value chains in the surrounding areas. Integrated agro-industrial parks are not just infrastructure facilities. They are comprehensive ecosystems designed to enhance agricultural productivity, promote value addition, and drive economic growth. These parks provide a range of services and facilities that support the entire agricultural value chain, from production and processing to marketing and distribution. By offering relevant technologies, training, and access to markets, these parks empower farmers and agribusinesses to operate more efficiently and sustainably. They play a crucial role in rural development, job creation, and food security, contributing to the achievement of the SDGs, including SDG 1, ending extreme poverty, SDG 2, zero hunger, and SDG 9, industry, innovation, and infrastructure. Regional initiatives such as the Common African Agro Parks Program and the formation of the Alliance for Special Agro-Industrial Processing Zones are crucial to share experience and scale up best practices. The Alliance, which includes the African Development Bank, Afrexim Bank, and Islamic Development Bank, and UNIDO, has pledged significant resources to develop rural African areas into agro-industrial hubs. In conclusion, aligning industrial policy with the development of industrial and agro-food parks is key to the sustainable development of not only Ethiopia, but Africa as a whole. By working together with partners, including UNIDO, we can unlock the potential of our agricultural sector by effectively linking it with industrial growth. I thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for this introduction and for sharing Ethiopia's experience, and especially through the establishment of integrated agro-industrial parks, which UNIDO is proud to support. Let us now move to the opening remarks of our other co-organizer, represented by Mr. Stefan Frederhofer, Deputy Permanent Representative of Austria. Prior to his appointment, Mr. Frederhofer was a member of the Cabinet of the Federal Minister for European and International Affairs of Austria. He also worked as head of unit for South and Southeast Asia in the Department for Asia and the Pacific. Mr. Frederhofer, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Adriana. And I'd like to start with welcoming Excellencies, the distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen. And I have to say that I'm honored to be able to participate in this timely and relevant session today on how industrial policy can accelerate the SDGs. Since the SDG summit took place last September, we have come yet another year closer to the time when the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development is supposed to be achieved. And with only 5 years left, it's fundamental that we continue to assess our progress so far. We must identify which strategies have been successful and which strategies were less successful in accelerating the SDGs so that we can continue on the right track. And this can only be done through data and evidence-based research. And in this context, I'd really like to commend UNIDO for taking a leading role in providing evidence-based research on inclusive and sustainable industrial development in line with its role as custodian agency for several SDG 9 indicators. The Industrial Development Report Series is a good example of this, and I have to say that this is quite a substantial document. So very much looking forward to hearing more in depth what the main content is, and thank you so much for outlining some of the key elements already. So the SDG-oriented industrial policies promoted by UNIDO also contribute to achieving the aims of increased innovation, speed up green transition, food security, and agri-food systems transformation, and generally reduce poverty. UNIDO's contributions to these most important aims are highlighted in this year's IDR. Maybe now a few words on Austria. So our long-standing partnership with UNIDO has covered many cooperation areas that address, amongst others, needs of countries in special development situations. And a recent example of the fruitful cooperation between Austria and UNIDO was at the SIDS-4 conference in Antigua and Barbuda in May. And there Austria received a leadership award by the SIDS-DOC for its support in creating the global network of sustainable energy centers in collaboration with UNIDO. We also concluded a joint declaration with SIDS-DOC and UNIDO to continue this cooperation and this project for an additional 10 years. And with the adoption of the Antigua and Barbuda Action for SIDS, this and other initiatives are even more relevant than ever. Throughout the various intergovernmental negotiations this year, we continue to see member states reaffirming the importance of sustainable industrialization for economic diversification and resilience, including during the preparatory process for the LLDC3 conference, which Austria had the honor to co-facilitate. And I'm really happy that we have already agreed with the membership on the outcome document for the conference to take place later this year. As co-chair of the group of friends of inclusive and sustainable industrial development, together with our friends from Ethiopia, we stand ready to facilitate discussions on how industrialization can be the foundation for accelerating the SDGs, including the ones under review this year. With us, pleased to co-host today's event, along with our co-chairs, the permanent representative of Ethiopia, His Excellency Mr. Tesfaye Yilmaz, and UNIDO. And finally, let me thank all participants again for joining us today, and I look forward to a fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your remarks. Now that we have heard from our co-organizers, my colleague Mr. Nobuya Haraguchi will present the key findings of the Industrial Development Report 2024. Nobuya is the chief of our Industrial Policy Research Unit, the unit that produces the IDR. The unit also conducts country diagnostics for programming and policy recommendations. Nobuya has published widely on structural change, patterns of manufacturing development, and industrial policy. Nobuya, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Adriana. I'd like to briefly introduce our flagship report, Industrial Development Report 2024. Our report, 2024 report, provides database SDG progress assessment, focusing especially industry-based SDGs, SDGs 7, 8, and 9, and also its impact on other SDGs indirectly through SDGs 7, 8, and 9. And it was produced in collaboration with UN Regional Economic Commissions and regional research partners and our member states. And the report has 4 regional perspectives, having in-depth insight into Africa, Asia Pacific, Eastern Europe, and Latin America situations. And we had a Professor Jeffrey Sachs as the advisor. So the global poly crisis hit the developing world due to the COVID-19 pandemic and armed conflicts and climate-induced catastrophes. And consequences are very apparent: surging inflation, high employment, disruptions in value chains, and unprecedented increase in extreme poverty and hunger. For example, we have now 122 million more people facing hunger now than before the COVID in 2019. And also we have an increase in unemployment, especially low-income countries, 70 million more people in extreme hunger and extreme poverty. And also the number of natural disasters has increased 5 times over the last 50 years. And UN report indicates only 15% of SDGs indicators on track. And 48% are making very slow progress, and the rest 37% are essentially not moving or even regressing. On top of these challenges, we also have changes, megatrends, energy transition, fourth industrial revolution, global rebalancing, and demographic transitions. For example, energy transition, the world has now 4 times more capacity to generate renewable energy compared with 20 years ago. And fourth industrial revolution, we have witnessed skyrocketing share of artificial intelligence patent in the total patents. And also global rebalancing, we have seen increasing rate of Asia's economies in the world. Asia's GDP in the world GDP has increased by 20 percentage points over the last 20 years. As for demographic transitions, we have seen 2 distinct trends. In developing countries, especially Africa, we have seen rapid growth in the population, and industrialized countries face rapid aging society. And in this challenging and changing context, industry can provide solutions. Industry has extensive linkages with other sectors, and also it can support technological development and innovation. So industry can be a major driving force to rescue SDGs, and it has through direct effects and indirect effects. Direct effects is SDG 9's capacity to contribute economic development, provision of goods, and job creation, and creating technological innovation. And indirect effects are mainly through SDG 8, economic growth and job creation, and SDG 7, clean and affordable energy. For example, for economic growth, we looked at growth episode of the past 50 years, and more than 60% of these growths are led by manufacturing goods. And SDG 7, manufacturing tends to have a very high R&D intensity and create green products which can support decarbonization of the world. And indirectly, SDG 9 industry can support SDG 1, no poverty. As Cecilia mentioned, that one job in manufacturing can create more than 2 jobs in other sectors due to forward and backward linkages, and creation of jobs can contribute to poverty reduction. And SDG 2, no hunger, industry can help increase agricultural productivity and reduce food insecurity. As I mentioned, that industry has very high R&D intensity. It can supply necessary technologies, machinery, equipment to increase the productivity of other sectors such as agriculture. And SDG 13, SDG 9 industry can support indirectly through SDG 7. 60% of green patents are held by industrial firms, even though the number of industrial farms, share of industrial farms in the total farms are often 10 to 15% in countries. So industry accelerates SDG progress through direct and indirect channels. And industry's impacts on other SDGs comes through mainly its effect on SDGs 7 and 8 and 9. So this report had in-depth assessment on the progress on SDGs, these three SDGs, SDG 7, 8, and 9. We used the UN official data, SDG indicators, and looked at three dimensions of each SDGs. SDG 7, energy access, energy efficiency, and clean energy. SDG 8, employment, economic growth, and resource efficiency. SDG 9, industry innovation and infrastructure. And in 2021, developing countries are especially lacking behind clean energy for SDG 7 and employment generation for SDG 8 and innovation for SDG 8. And also we looked at the speed of the progress from 2009 to 2019, before the COVID. And developing countries made quite significant progress, especially infrastructure, energy access, and energy efficiency. But it is having sort of deceleration in terms of economic growth. So developing countries need to pay attention, especially innovation, clean energy, economic growth, and employment generation. And industry does not happen automatically. It requires modern industrial policies. And modern industrial policies are characterized by four elements: collaboration, future orientation, SDG orientation, and regional coordination. Collaboration is important ever before because often the objectives of industrial development are not one, but countries need to achieve multiple objectives: inclusiveness, sustainability, and competitiveness. For that, all the stakeholders need to involve in the policy formulation and have close collaboration for information exchange. And future orientation, country needs to align their industrial policy with current and future trends. Otherwise, they might get surprises and cannot make the optimal progress given the opportunities of the current trends. And SDG orientation, countries need to be aware synergy and trade-off which exist across different SDGs. And regional coordination, countries in the same region tend to share similar challenges and opportunities. In order to unlock full potential of countries, they need to collaborate together, they need to come together and have a coordinated industry policy. And for developing countries, their domestic effort alone will not be sufficient. International community need to come together in solidarity to enhance their physical space and open the policy space, and also support technology transfer and skills development in developing countries. Our advisor, Professor Jeffrey Sachs, emphasized also the importance of coordination with neighbors in order to have regional scale infrastructure and regional coordination in industrial policies. To wrap up my discussion, SDG progress is at serious risk, and industries can be key solution to accelerate SDG progress. And in order to develop industrial policy industries, we need to have modern industrial policies. And also, the world needs to come together and have a fair globalization. Thank you.
Thank you, Nobuya, for sharing these key findings of the IDR. We now have a firm basis to move the discussion to our speakers. I will introduce our speakers as I hand them the floor. First, I would like to give the floor to Ms. Sakiko Kudapar, Professor of International Affairs at the New School and member of the UN Committee for Development Policy. Ms. Fakudapar's teaching and research has focused on human rights and development, global health, global goal setting, and governance by indicators. From 1995 to 2004, she was lead author and director of the UNDP Human Development Reports. She's also a member of the Committee on Development Policy under ECOSOC. Professor, the IDR 2024 tells us that industry-driven innovation is key to accelerating SDG progress. However, there's a huge gap in terms of innovation capabilities between advanced and developing countries. This is reflected in the progress made so far by developing countries and SDG 9 innovation indicators, which stand only at 20%. So the question to you, so what actions can policymakers in developing countries take to reduce the innovation gap? And how can the international community support this process? Professor, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much for this invitation to participate in this panel. And I'd like to congratulate UNIDO and the team for IDR 24, which highlights important evidence and insights about industrial policy and the role of innovation. It also very nicely complements the work of the CDP on innovation ecosystems for development, structural change and equity. and our report, 2024 report to ECOSOC. In my remarks, of course, I will draw on this work and the report. Regarding this question about the huge gap in innovation capabilities, in fact, IDR 24 answers these questions in its own conclusion that new industrial policies are in fact being driven by highly industrialized countries and that the rest are kind of being left behind. And this is in fact the basis for the CDP's own core message, which is that all countries, all national governments, but also global institutions need to reassess their policy frameworks to create effective innovation ecosystems. And in doing so, we emphasize 3 points. First, that the potential for technological innovation is hugely underutilized, particularly in developing countries, because of the lack of the kind of policies that we need. Secondly, that the global environment for innovation in the 21st century is vastly different from that of the 20th century. And that is the reason why all countries, even those that have actually been very successful in developing capabilities in the 20th centuries, also need to reassess their policy frameworks. And this is because of the changes in the global economy, which is characterized as sort of 21st century finance capitalism, the rise in the importance of intangible assets that drive growth and the ability to shape the economy. But we also have to emphasize that innovation is not an end in itself. It must serve the purposes of sustainability and equity, serve the public purpose. And for developing countries, we emphasize particularly the strategic priorities of structural transformation. And like the UNIDO report, we emphasize that the innovation ecosystem fit for the 21st century cannot rely on domestic policy frameworks alone. Domestic institutions, human resources, knowledge in strategic areas are very important, but so is a globally facilitating environment for innovation in these countries. Let me illustrate with a couple of examples from the pharmaceutical sector the role of public public-private partnerships, PPPs, as a pathway to technological innovation has been emphasized in this report as in other debates. Important initiatives are underway with PPPs to build pharmaceutical manufacturing capability in Africa, particularly in response to the experience of the COVID-19 pandemic that highlighted the region's vulnerability to depending on external supplies of vaccines and other essential health products. But the experience of PPPs as an approach to capacity development has been limited because of the lack of expansive technology transfer and in developing technological capabilities that are durable in the long term. For example, a recent, that is 2023, study by Africa CDC, Clinton Foundation, and PATH on Africa's vaccine manufacturing capacity found that the planned expansion of vaccine manufacturing capacity is mostly for fill and finish stage of production. It does not engage with the production of drug substances, the antigens, which lags badly in the region. And therefore, the region's countries will continue to be very dependent on imports and vulnerable to the vagaries of supply. Another example is in the negotiations of a global treaty, the pandemic treaty, which has actually been held up. The agreement has been held up and stuck with the contentious issues around technology transfer and equitable access particularly around the arrangements for pathogen access and benefit sharing, or PABS, as well as equitable access in other ways. So global institutions and arrangements are needed in the 21st century to overcome the effects of this global economy that favors financial transactions, to respect the need to preserve space for public goods, global public goods, and to serve public needs, essential needs, and priorities. We need, therefore, global arrangements that recognize global public goods that will be accessible to all countries and provide the benefits of technological progress equitably and universally. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor, very much for your thoughts and insights. Let us now move to Ms. Lilac Nahum, who's joining us online, professor at Baruch College, City University of New York. Professor Nahum is an expert on globalization and economic development. She's also a fellow of the Academy of International Business and was a Fulbright scholar in Kenya. Professor, while presenting the findings of the IDR, Nabuya pointed out the important role that industry plays in increasing agricultural productivity, which in turn improves food security and rural livelihoods. In your experience, how can the development of the agribusiness sector contribute to achieving SDG 2? Professor, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for having me. I appreciate very much the opportunity to comment on this report that I read with great interest. So, and really salute to UNIDO for producing such an excellent report. But back to your question, since moving to Africa, where I've now been spending the last 3 years, I have become an enormous supporter of the importance of agribusiness to the development of Africa, and I believe by extension also to many other developing countries. I think maybe you were very much reflected in the comments made by the Ethiopian ambassador and of the importance of the agribusiness sector to African economies and others as well. And SDG 2 speaks about eradicating hunger, and mentioned the 600 million hungry people in the world. Most of them presumably make their living in agribusiness, but seem not to be able to even feed themselves, let alone others, and make end meets. And there is really kind of a contradiction in the situation of agribusiness in emerging markets, that on the one hand, the agribusiness sector sector accounts for the largest portion of unemployment and GDP in these countries. In parallel, it is the least developed in the world, and it's so behind in terms of by any measure that we would like to take in terms of farm size or use of machinery or labor productivity. The poorest countries in the world, to whom SDG 2 speaks the most, the more are they falling behind, and by far. So there is a very concerning issue here. And I think that for the SDG 2 to materialize, but way beyond SDG 2, for almost all the SDGs combined, with directly or indirectly, the agribusiness must be a central part of the solution. And there is an emphasis in the report and a general narrative on economic development in general that industrialization is the path for economic development, and industrialization via manufacturing particularly, and the report speaks about that in length, and we have heard some suggestions about this just a few minutes ago. And I of course agree with this entirely, but I think that industrialization in Africa, at least the region I know the most, but I think also many others, should start with agribusiness and upgrade and upscale from agribusiness onward in order to create manufacturing, what we call agri-manufacturing, rather than manufacturing in other words. That seems to be a much more promising pathway for economic development for Africa and many other emerging markets. And I think of course, policy has a big role to play here. Particularly, the report speaks so much about the need for modern industrial policy that I fully support. But I think that the policy agenda, in order to reach the development of agribusiness, should include 3 issues: upscaling, upgrading, and exporting. And there is policy rule for each of them. So in relation to upscaling, there is a need to remove obstacles for market-driven consolidation. This sector somehow has not consolidated. If anything, has become more fragmented over the years. And there appears to be some tangible benefits for doing that. A major one among them, in my view, is the issues around land ownership, and also the cultural tradition of generational division of the land. And then maybe overarching all this is a terrible capital shortage that allows consolidation. So that's about upscaling, because everything has remained on such a small scale in the agribusiness in Africa that could not possibly develop in any way unless this is changed somehow. Just to put to illustrate the point, average farm size in the last 100 years tripled in the US, UK, Canada, some other countries. It grew by a multiple of 5 in Denmark, but it shrunk across the poorest countries, and in some of them very substantially. So that has been completely opposite trend in terms of upscaling. The second issue is upgrading. So Africa and many other emerging markets export the raw agribusiness material. And there is an urgent need in order for them to develop, to upgrade their export and move away from the raw material into processed food and processed product. To achieve this, there is an important need for providing skills, training, capital, in order to replace labor with machinery. Heavy investment in R&D. The report suggests that shows that R&D investment in agriculture is so low compared to manufacturing, and that's of course true, but that's part of the problem, in my view, and an important issue that needs to be changed in order to develop the agribusiness. So these are the issues, and I know that UNIDO is already playing an important role in that and can even extend more on this. And the third and last one in this tripartite that I described, upscaling, upgrading. The third one is exporting. open global market for agribusiness imports is global trade in agribusiness has been the lowest in the world, and I'm sure all of us in this room are heavy supporter of the importance of trade and the belief in the importance of trade for economic development. But trade in agribusiness has shrunk in the last 50 years. It went from 8% of global trade to slightly over 1%. That's agriculture raw material, and for less than half in food trade. So we know that agriculture is the most protected sector, and that shows up in trade statistics, of course, not surprisingly. So I think these are the policy measures that are needed in order to bring the agribusiness to the forefront of economic development, and really to spearhead the achievement of all the SDG, including SDG 2 that you asked me about specifically. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. We now move to Ms. Shia Gopal, Permanent Representative to the UN for the International Organization of Employers and co-chair of the UN Business and Industry Major Group. In her role as Permanent Representative, Ms. Gopal has been leading initiatives to enhance private sector engagement with the United Nations at the country, regional, and global levels. Ms. Gopal, the report highlights that there are several megatrends shaping the global production landscape, including the digital and green transition. How can countries equip their young population with the skills needed for the future in the face of these transformative changes?
So thank you very much, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, thank you for the excellent report. It took me a couple hours to read it, I have to say. I didn't read just the summary. It's really comprehensive and excellent data. But we really appreciate the focus on SDG 9 and 8 in particular, which we seem to be losing sometimes these days. Investment, skills, technology, but most importantly, when you talk about coordination, it's just not one or the other, but how we collaborate. And a very key point, which is music to our ears, is what you've written about collaboration with the private sector, but being involved in the policy design and implementation, and not just, which we really do feel sometimes, being the checkbook to pay for some of these initiatives. The beauty of working with the private sector is their knowledge base, their technology, their data as well. So in line with this, a little bit about the IOE. The IOE is obviously based in Geneva. It's the voice of business at the ILO, and it represents 50 million companies in over 140 different countries through our employers' federations. So our bread and butter of our members is all about industrial relations. It's about policies and procedures. In line with this, what we were finding, and with my colleague next to me who's going to speak next from CAS, we created a playbook, which we decided that we really need to be speaking directly at the local level with the policy people. And so this is a playbook based on dialogues, collaboration between the resident coordinators and the employers' federations, who in many cases we did not know one another once we started the discussions. But the reason why we think this is important is based on your report. It's critical that employers be there at the table when you're starting these projects on infrastructure, on digital transformation, the green transition. If we're not there at the table from the beginning, from the planning stage, in the cooperative frameworks, then unfortunately it's lost in your eventual implementation. Now, in particular, we have been very much involved in the SIDS. We were there at LDC 5. It's very clear if you want job creation, you need certain things. I'll stress those points. You need investment in SME development. You need infrastructure development. And this is, from every industry, most of our members are saying, you can't connect people if they don't have electricity. You need global trade. You need labor migration. proper, organized. We are for migration. We lead the advisory group for business, the business group on migration. We're very much about people moving from one side to the other of the border because we need talent as employers. But on the particular area of skills, what you were mentioning, 44% of workers' skills will be disrupted in the next 5 years. According to the WEF, 1/4 of the training in the coming years will be provided by internal learning and development groups, 15% by employer-driven apprenticeships, 13% by professional associations, 12% by private sector online learning, and 10% by universities and educational institutions. So this is basically, these statistics are telling us a lot of the skills development and this digital transformation in the workplace is highly dependent on the employers. Now, the big word out there, AI, we can't go through a meeting without speaking about it. Prior to ChatGPT, we were talking about probably a change of, it would take 3 to 5 years to say your skills need to change. Now we've already moved within 1 year from 60% of the changes in skills to 65% will change over the next years. So do we have time to sit down and discuss what the curriculum should be? Because right now we need those skills on AI. And so there's a saying, will AI take your jobs away? No, but the person who has AI skills will. And so we need to move quickly in trying to train young people, but also more importantly in this just transition, when we move to the bluer, greener economies, the circular economy, we absolutely need to move fast in training older workers to move into the newer jobs and also younger people. But it's key, public-private partnerships. Skills councils at the local level are absolutely critical in bringing employers, workers, trade unions, young people together to design some of these curriculum programs. Excellent examples. South Africa has an excellent program. We have Austria sitting here. We have Germany sitting here, Switzerland. They have all excellent programs. But the beauty of these programs is its collaboration between all groups. We also need to have tax incentives. We need to give an incentive for employers because it is an expense for them to develop these programs, but also to teach them. Large companies, we represent multinationals, we represent SMEs, we represent LDCs. Large multinational companies have excellent training programs. The more they can share these programs with the smaller companies in some of the LDCs, and we have a program with Microsoft where we're developing digital skills for young people. These are critical examples of us working together. We also need, as I said, the movement of people. The advisory group on global migration, we must get people across borders in an easy, simple way, but we also need to recognize their skills recognition. So there's a whole organization around this that needs to come together to really promote education and employer-driven education. We have set up something called the Global Apprenticeship Network, which is a public-private network. And we have plenty of examples. Rwanda, we have the government launched a national strategy for transformation, which includes digital skills, infrastructure, investments in ICT infrastructure. Kenya, they've implemented a Kenyan National Digital Master Plan around digital skills, infrastructure training. All these are excellent examples. We don't do it alone. Coming together is absolutely key, public and private. So I'll stop there.
Thank you on that positive note, coming together. Let us now move to Mr. Thomas Totling, representative to the United Nations and executive director of the New York office at Konrad Adenauer Foundation. Before joining CAS, where he worked in several functions, Mr. Totling was, among other posts, advisor to a member of the European Parliament. The IDR 2024 highlights that modern industrial policy should engage key stakeholders, including government and the private sector. Why are collaborative industrial policies key to this success? You have the floor.
Thank you very much for the invitation. And before I start, I think it's important also to stress again the bigger context, because I think the expectations that this SDG process is successful is very high. There's a lot of implications for the future of the multilateral system in general. So I think this event today, where we talk about how we can make this happen, is a very important one. So thank you for that. Concerning on the collaborative approach, so my colleague Shay already mentioned a few points on that, but I think that in general, the challenge per se is too complex, it's too big, and it's also too interconnected. That we can say, well, we still continue to think in silos, we continue to think in private and public, we continue to think in national or local or whatever spheres. So I think the challenge already itself requires that we think in an interconnected way, that we address those challenges, its complexity and interconnectedness as it's necessary. I think it's also important when we come to solution, when we talk about the private sector, and Shay mentioned as well, the private sector, I think, is not only about value when it comes to investment and funding. The private sector has a lot of expertise, has a lot of perspectives, which are valued and important for the solution of this process. And this is not a specific characteristics for industrial policy. We recently had an event on primary health care, and we face a similar challenge that we say, well, we have to cooperate, and we have to cooperate in the identification of the problem, we have to cooperate in the implementation of the problem, and we have to accept what I call a certain shared 3 Rs. This is a shared responsibility, shared risk, but also shared reward of our cooperation. So I think that the challenge is that if we act as a public sector on our own, we run the risk of identifying maybe the wrong problems, we identifying the wrong needs, and we identifying the wrong solutions. And the problem is we wake up after everything happened and we take stock of what happened, and often it's then too late. So that's the reason why I think the cooperation between, in particular, private and public sector, but also other areas like academia, like civil society, is key to make these SDGs a success, also in the area of industrial policy. And I think every sector can bring in what the sector is capable of. I think the public sector has the obligation to offer a vision, to offer strategies. Private sector is mostly much stronger in flexibility and innovation. And I think if we join forces in that one, I think we can go forward, although not a lot of time remains until 2030, but with a good spirit, and and I think we will find also good solutions for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Let me finally turn to Ms. Dima Al-Khatib, who is the director of the UN Office for South-South Cooperation and another close partner of UNIDO. Ms. Al-Khatib has held various senior positions in the UN system, including in the field, as UNDP resident representative in the Republic of Moldova. Ms. Al-Khatib, how can South-South cooperation enhance and support industrialization at the regional level? And what concrete platforms and mechanisms can we offer to countries in this event? Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. It's definitely a great pleasure to join this discussion, a very timely one. And congrats for such a valuable report. Not only timely, but it does converge. I mean, here, from a South-South cooperation perspective, it converges a lot with all the demands and the priorities that have been voiced by the member states and different forums. Let me name a few: the Third South Summit that took place earlier this year, the Science, Technology and Innovation Conference that took place in Havana, all calling for an enhanced science, technology and innovation for sustainable development. And I think this is at the heart of what the report is calling for. Let me also, and I do agree with all of the comments that have been shared by the previous eminent speakers, but let me share also a few insights from our work on South-South cooperation and triangle cooperation on various fronts that do converge also with the report. So first, with the mega trends like those that the reports offer, they do affect developing countries and the poor disproportionately. I think this was also voiced. And these mega trends are interconnected. They collide with persistent development challenges in the global south, requiring integrated and hyper-contextual and hyper-local responses. Second, the fourth industrial revolution is uneven globally. Digitalization is shifting industries and the job landscapes, with many developing countries still catching up. And third, the countries in special situations would need greater support. So we do have the opportunity to look at industrial development into different frames, such as the one recently discussed with the Antigua and Barbuda agenda for SIDS, as well as the envisaged new program of action for the landlocked developing countries. And there will be a conference where this will be discussed. I think this would be a good opportunity. And fourth, it's the regional cooperation, which would be crucial for building infrastructures and capacities. So it's also timely because the report calls for rethinking of growth, globalization, and sustainable development. And we must also think about cooperation models to leverage South-South and Triangle cooperation more effectively. This would call for solutions rooted in local context and knowledge, shaped by stakeholders who know their own needs and informed by what already works in similar situations. We do have an initiative called the Global Thinkers Network, which offers ready intellectual capital, while also our South-South Galaxy platform, a digital platform, offers solutions, over 950 solutions specific to Global South. So these two networks are also something that we can further use for the popularization of such messages and engagement. And the whole purpose is to also amplify the voice of the thinkers from the South. Unlocking more investments, including from Southern partners. We have been also trying to, through our trust funds entrusted to us by countries from the South, have also broadened support in developing countries, and they can tap into this. It amplifies the impact of cooperation also on the ground and gives a lot of lessons learned and best practices that feeds into our policy dialogue discussions, but also in terms of sharing back to the countries these best practices. Broadening our base of support also through triangle cooperation. I think this is a very important entry point whereby we can ensure that there is benefit, if you will, in terms of the knowledge that comes from the advanced economies, building capacities and providing resources, which would be very important to help developing countries build and leapfrog their capacities. We do have the privilege to collaborate with a diverse number of development partners to build what we call the South-South Solutions Lab. This is a new platform that we are rolling out and call for collaboration. You mentioned academia, private sector. I think this is also an opportunity whereby we can bring these brains and minds to support shaping these solutions in terms of testing and piloting and incubating. Soon, later in a few months, we will be also launching what we call the Triangle Cooperation Funding Window as part of the South-South Cooperation Funding mechanisms. And this is also a platform to bridge the knowledge between the different countries and also bring additional support for the countries of the South. Strengthening the integrated support is also something that will demand transformative action on many fronts. We are the UN system on interlocutor in terms of South-South cooperation. We're more than happy to also provide that platform of triggering such discussion, but also mobilizing the expertise that the system offers. So, by shaping by collectively contributing to shaping the future of development cooperation, I think this would help further the global South or the countries of the South to build their own capacities at a scale and a speed that equals the challenges, but also at the cost or ways that could propel change and that would not pose any additional burdens. So cooperation is the name of the game among neighbors, but also across regions, I think will be essential moving forward. But in terms of the proximities, within the same regions, it is also something that will bring countries together in geography and common experiences and complementarity. And this is what makes South-South cooperation extremely useful and beneficial. And we do stand ready to cooperate. I mean, this morning, opening of the high-level political forum, there was repeatedly, underscored cooperation and solidarity. And I think this is an extremely important element in our discussion to be able to bring the equality of this, bridging of the SDGs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Thank you. As we only have a few minutes left, I was thinking of just giving all our speakers 1 to 2 minutes to reflect on what you heard. And Nubuya, maybe we can start with you. Please go ahead.
Yes, we had a very good discussions, and I confirmed that the importance of the industrial development, not only for the sake of the industries, but also to achieve countries' socio-economic development. And for that, I have importance of public and private sector collaboration, because industrial policies are becoming increasingly complex, and without consulting with all the necessary relevant stakeholders, when we come to implement industrial policies, we tend to fail. So, and private sectors get surprised. So this sort of collaboration with private sector and all other relevant stakeholders would be the key. That is one thing I want to emphasize again from this discussion.
Thank you very much, Nubuya. Professor Fakudapar,
Thank you.
to you.
Yes, just a couple of additional points. I think we didn't talk about intellectual property rights as a central policy mechanism in the 21st century, where this value of intangibles is going to be dominating the successful countries in technological development, innovation for industrialization and for the SDGs. And there I want to emphasize that countries are simply not using the policy space that is available to them under existing international legal frameworks to craft intellectual property regimes that are adapted to their national priorities. And one example of that, of course, is the use of TRIPS flexibilities, which are a well-established mechanism in international as well as in domestic law of countries like the United Kingdom and the United States for situations like emergencies, for things like government procurement for government use, and also by issuing non-compulsory licensing and so forth. And so the WTO Director General Ngozi said recently, let me emphasize that many developing countries, governments have not yet put in place legal mechanisms or tools that allow the use of existing and future flexibilities. With the impact of climate change on health becoming more evident, this is the time to get ready. And this is the WTO Director General speaking. And the second point that I want to raise is that there is an awful lot of discussion today about employment, the creation of employment, but we cannot stop there. We need to create decent jobs, not just employment. And we know that in the 21st century economy, we will have a continuation of this global value chains in which low-income countries, LDCs, will be providing low-skilled, low-wage labor under conditions that are, quite frankly, exploitative. And we really need to put in place, yes, private sector is important, but the accountability of the private sector to uphold decent work standards. And finally, I just want to let you know that we have some copies of the CDP report on innovation ecosystems here. We also have a thing whereby you can get at it on the internet. So I encourage you to please take a copy or to access our report. Thank you very much. And thank you again for inviting me to participate today.
Thank you. So may we now move to Professor Nahum online?
Yes.
Professor, since
joining.
we're running out of time, please, if we can make it to 1 minute.
1 minute, okay. I'll have to speak very quickly. Yeah, I wanted to say a few words about an issue that is related to the first topic that I spoke about industrialization via manufacturing and the sort of question marks that are raised about whether this is the best way forward. I think closely related to this is the belief that this has to be done by emerging market firms joining global supply chains developed by others. And the theme that is running throughout the report is the need again and again to attract FDI as the solution, which is a part of that, as a solution for the developmental issues of the development and challenges of developing countries. And I want to suggested another perspective to this issue related to a study. I had some, since moving to Africa, I had some reservations about the fit of this model to Africa. And I think maybe some other emerging markets, but I may not know enough about them in order to speak, but I feel comfortable to say this about Africa. But I completed a large-scale study that where we looked at thousands of developing countries, thousands of African exporters, and we compared those who export directly on their own, which means establish their own supply chain and export, compared to those who export via intermediaries, third party, most of the time via global supply chain, sell their output to global brand, and from them and they export it as part of their products. And we found that direct exporters export more and innovate more. So and I had a very strong findings about that, which I find very interesting because they raise some questions regarding the broad validity of the belief in global supply chains as the ultimate solution to economic developments, and on the other hand suggest that more attention might be given to indigenous growth and to encouragement of indigenous growth. That has important policy implications because it really swap the focus of policy from attracting FDI and creating venues for engagement between foreign companies and local companies to the development of local companies and development of indigenous capacity. And as you've probably heard that those issues received much traction in Africa nowadays, particularly under the slogan of Afro-capitalism. So, and the sort of encouraging of entrepreneurship and domestic growth. So I think more thought should be given to this direction as a path for economic growth for developing countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. Now, Ms. Gopal, please, you have 1 minute.
We have 1 minute, very quickly. Policies matter, and they're not a quick fix. It demands social dialogue and bringing partners around the table. Regulation we need, but smart regulation. We want to create jobs, we don't want to destroy them. SMEs are the backbone to the economy, 70 to 90% of the jobs. We have to ensure that the policies that we implement are implementable for SMEs, not necessarily for multinationals who are already, in many cases, following this. But accountability is a very important point. but accountability of governments as well. At the LDC5, we had numerous 26 CEOs from LDC countries speaking, and they said, yes, we will invest, we will create jobs. However, we need peace and stability in our country. We need good governance. We need to deal with corruption. We need rules, regulations around taxation. We need sustainable social protection systems. In order to do this, we need to make sure that we address the informal sector. We didn't touch on that today, but that is a huge issue in many countries, and governments need to step up and to try to address those issues as well. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lundberg, the floor is yours.
Yes, I understand a positive conclusion would be welcome. So I do two-third positive conclusions. So first of all, I think we have a more or less a good idea. We understand the challenges we have. And I think the good news is also we have a quite good idea about the solutions, which is also reflected in your excellent report here. The last third that remains, what is needed is the openness and the political will, the willingness to overcome obstacles of cooperation to make these solutions happen. And also on that one, I think we should be positive. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Al-Khatib?
Yes, thank you. 3 points from my side. Focus need to be made on use, really, and this links very well with the point on SMEs. Youth are, I think the majority of the population demographics in the South are youth. These are the agents of change, and we need to factor that in. My second point is a bit on the rollout of the report. It's important that this report triggers dialogue at the regional and the country level. So this is kind of a recommendation to think about the rollout using the UN resident coordinator system because it's very important. If we don't get there, then those discussions might not trigger that change. And the third point is about financing. And here the role of the different sources of financing are very important. So that's something also to think about as we trigger these policy dialogues at the countries and the regional level. I think it should include at the table potential options for financing to move this agenda forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before we conclude, I also wanted to give the opportunity to our organizers to comment in a minute. Excellency Ambassador Safo, please go ahead.
All important things have already been said. The only, look, it's a very scientific, very research-based, data-driven kind of discussion, and we are very, very grateful for that. Then again, the structural issues that we are managing to move through, or living through, for that matter, in the South, the global South, particularly in Africa, we have, you see, financing, a critical problem that was mentioned by Mr. Khatib. Where is it coming from? SDGs are there, but financing is nowhere to be seen. So we need to talk about those things as well. The debt, where is it? We pay billions in debt servicing. Then with that kind of structural buying, how are we going to make progress through the SDG systems? So we need to be looking into all dimensions. The technicality is good, the science is good, we need them. Hunger, extreme poverty can be addressed, and climate problems can be addressed. On our side of the equation, we can do certain things. We plant trees in Ethiopia. Tree planting doesn't require a lot of capital as far as we are concerned. We do the seedlings, and we make it a popular culture, and even in wedding occasions, weddings are not complete without planting trees. So billions of trees have been planted in the last 5-6 years. We need to do our bit. The climate, the environment is not for anybody else. It's for our own sake. And while we are doing that, then we need solidarity from the high-level political forum. The term comes again and again. Solidarity in climate change, solidarity in the SDGs. We have this agreement. We have the document, a very worked out plan. That's the SDGs. And it's faltering. It's very, very true. But they are not moving in the right direction. So we need to get together, we need to show solidarity, we need to show empathy, and not humanitarian things, just, to keep you moving, to keep you surviving, but to become a good member of the productive community of the globe. So next time, we'll have more comprehensive. We'll bring these dimensions to our discussion. And for today, this was very, very good, and I'm very grateful.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Thank you for your remarks. And Mr. Petrovic, would you like to give some concluding remarks?
Yeah, thank you very much. And I would also like to thank everyone for participating here today. And I learned a lot in this 1 hour or so, and I think this discussion will continue. I also would like to acknowledge again the pivotal role UNIDO is playing in the field of industrial development. I think it's also very important that the UN, under your able leadership, is also trying to deliver as one. I've heard it a couple of times, breaking the silos. Yes, I think there were so many different areas being mentioned, from accountability to youth, to environment, to climate, all different, lots of stakeholders within the UN family. So I think it's very important also to work together. Also the cooperation between the headquarters and the field. And this is only the UN family, that we of course have the private sector, the public sector. And I mean, I would like to end with also thinking a little bit on what we as member states can do. Because I think one of the key words is cooperation. And I think what I see is that we need even more cross-regional cooperation. I mean, it's great to co-host today with Ethiopia, and we have very close cooperation anyway. And we're trying to do this also with other countries. And I think a lot of the issues we have discussed today are also being discussed amongst member states. We have this very big process, you're all very, very well aware of that, the Summit of the Future, which encompasses lots of those issues we have been discussing now. And of course, it will be a political document, so it will not go into all the technicalities, but I think it will give a lot of guidance. And there again, I mean, we have to find a consensus amongst ourselves, and I think it's a very important document, a very important exercise. I think we're making very good progress. We still have a couple of weeks to go till our heads of state and government will hopefully endorse this pact for the future. And also lots of the issues we discussed here today will be also incorporated in the document. So we'll also do our best from our side as member states to push this forward.
Thank you very much. And finally, I would like to ask our Deputy Director General, who's also been listening carefully, to share a few key takeaways.
Thank you, Adriana, and thank you all for this very, very enlightening discussion. I'm very satisfied by the fact that I see lots of, I would say, complementarity in all the interventions that we had this afternoon. I must say, UNIDO is, of course, our mandate is inclusive and sustainable industrialization. And as you may well understand, for a long time, when we used to hear that the best industrial policy was no industrial policy at all, the organization really suffered. And I think now we are kind of with some satisfaction right now, we are really saying that, increasingly, the debate is being repositioned, and industrialization is coming back to the fora, as our representative from Austria was also mentioning. We are very pleased to see that in the contributions from the G77 to the Pact for the Future, we are seeing industrialization there. We still cross our fingers and hope this is going to stay in the final document, right? But I think it's very, very important that this realization has come to place. I mean, at some point it was just let's talk about private sector because private sector has to do it. It's not possible. we have to really also build up capacities at the public sector, because when we talk about industrialization in the 21st century, it's a very complex, it's a very sophisticated, I would say, type of policy that we need our member states to be able to shape and craft for the young future. So in that sense, I really welcome this exchange. I thank a lot our co-chairs, Austria and Ethiopia, for their support. All of you, as you know, I consider that you're also part of the Friends of Sustainable and Inclusive Industrialization, and I really look forward also maybe to trying to launch and do a bit more of advocacy also for our own mandate that we think is very strategic. Without industrialization, we are not going to be able to make it, and this is something that I think my colleagues in the research department have been very, very able to illustrate. We need industrialization if we really want to be able to move forward with Agenda 2030. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Dear colleagues, I would now like to conclude our event by thanking all of you for your participation, both online and in person. We hope that today's discussion has been stimulating and informative. And thank you very much again. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.